Hypocrites they are, a description of persons, particularly legal practitioners, criticizing the president for remitting the sentences of 3 jailed contemners. Today on News Desk, we assess the president's decision to cut short the sentence of the 3 and its likely implications for the practice of separation of powers in the country, his political future, and indeed, the fight for equality before the law. We bring you a comprehensive interview with the former Attorney General on these vexed matters. We have that, plus some business and sports coming up in the next hour. Stay tuned. My name is Kwabna Chenche Hinibuati. Many thanks for joining us here on News Desk. Now, President John Dramani Mahama has pardoned the 3 persons serving a 4-month jail term for criminal contempt. A radio host with the Accra-based Munti FM, Salif Umase, and 2 panelists, Alistair Nelson and Godwin Akogan, were found guilty for threatening some Supreme Court judges presiding over a case involving the Electoral Commission. Now, a statement signed by Communications Minister Dr. Edward Omaniboma said the decision was taken on the advice of the Council of States and was on compassionate grounds. Now, there have been widespread and varied opinions following the president's decision to remit the sentences of the 3. But what does lawyer for the contemners make of the discourse so far? Here's Godwin Eduji Tamaklo speaking earlier on the AM show.
Well, almost every conviction that the president had in one way or the other granted pardon or remission has always been on the basis of conviction from a court of competent jurisdiction. So it has always, and that relationship had always existed, not today. That relationship had been exercised, that power, by former President Rawlings. Kufuor did the same thing. In fact, by December 2008, about 1,400 people were all pardoned one way or the other. You know the famous musician Jima, you remember? Today he's a pastor out there. He was equally pardoned by a president. Adamu Dramani Sakande, who was convicted for 2 years for perjury, Chachuchikata. The list is there. As for the political commentary, you can never stop people. Our democracy admits of people to express their opinion on issues they feel strongly about. To those who have reservation about the exercise of the Article 72 powers, I think they are entitled to do, just as the president is entitled to exercise his powers under that constitutional provision. I am surprised that lawyers who in the past had questioned the very processes that the Supreme Court adopted in this way. And I mean lawyer Tachia. If you recall, when he represented Ken Crunchy, he put up a very spirited defense of his client and questioned the very procedural basis upon which the Supreme Court even invited those people. Lawyer Ayikwe Otu, one-time leader of the bar, one-time former Attorney General of the Republic, even went to the extent of begging for Sir John. Now, what is important is that run through the comment of Sir John relative to the commentary by these 3. Within the political temperature at that time when the statement was made, at best was incite, at best was to put fear in the judges. The difference between Sir John and these 3 young men is that Sir John at the time was almost 32 years at the bar. Just like me, we have a better appreciation of what constitutes contempt. At what point a speech moves from ordinary speech into one that is threatening or one that is scandalizing. He's a lawyer, senior.
So you're saying what the words that came out of the 3 during that very discussion on that very radio station was out of the moment.
That's the point I'm making, that this, at least in terms of evaluating, look at even the pedigree of the individuals. They were seeking to comment on a proceeding before the court. They went beyond acceptable limit. Sometimes, if they had a kind of education relative to the law, I'm sure they would have been minded as to what to say. I am saying that where, for instance, a lawyer represents a lawyer who knows better and makes those scandalizing comments, criminal contempt of which he had been convicted for, but the lawyer feels that under the circumstance, he should go and apologize for the person and plead on behalf of that person. That plea which eventually saw his client not going to prison.
So, indeed, that was one of the lawyers for the contemners, whom we are told will now be free on Friday, August 26, following the remission of their sentences by the President. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. You did hear the lawyer there, Godwin Eduji Tameklo, in an interview there with Roland Walker earlier on the AM show. Well, let's now hear from a senior at the bar and a former Attorney General under the Kufuor administration, lawyer equal to, I'm proud to say, is my guest this morning on News Desk. Counsel, good morning. Many thanks for joining us.
Morning for having me. Good morning.
So, and again, thank you for joining us here. The first thing obviously has to do with the commentary that has come following the President's decision to remit the sentences. But maybe you could just take your thoughts on this, and then we could veer off into some other discussions.
Well, it's varied, you know, it's very, very varied. When this thing started, I saw it as an NDC propaganda. The opening of petition and those who took part in signing the book, including very, you know, senior minister like the Minister of Education and some others, you know, and why it played out from the Radio Gold's premises to other places, golden vigils and the rest, you know, clearly some of us felt that it was not going to augur well for the president if he should do that, and that he should be seen as a president of the country. He should not be listening to his NDC people, propagandists and apologists. But here we are. To me, it is even predictable. The whole thing was stage managed. The presentation of the petition to the Council of, you know, State Chairperson was put on, you know, on the air. It was everywhere. I mean, if you want to refer something to Council of State, why should this be, you know, put on air and papers, everybody front page for people to see that that's what you've done? So as far as I'm concerned, he's just listening to his party members and that's what they were asking him to do.
We'll be taking a look at what this necessarily means for the president as a candidate going into this year's elections and all, and a few other issues. But let's backtrack a bit and let's take a look at the jailing of these three persons. And there's a quote here from Martin Amido, and I'm sure you do recall as well, that he was pretty emphatic in a statement he released some weeks back, suggesting that, well, it was unconstitutional for the judges to, even in the first place, jail them.
I did a post on my Facebook wall, and I said I don't agree with him at all. Constitution gives the power of contempt to the Supreme Court and to Superior Court judges. The procedure for so doing is that they should have to deal with the matter. They have already ruled as far back as 205, 206, that the power given to the Attorney General to prosecute criminal cases under Article 88 does not include the power to commit for criminal contempt, and that power is exclusive to the courts. It is inherent in the courts. You know, so to say this, to me, is to advocate a shift in the law, which is not the position. So you can't say that, look, I want to do an advocacy, you know, H. Kwesi Prempe and the rest, you know, Kwekwasari. That's what they've been calling for. They want a shift in the law. But to present this as what is what I disagree with. You know, what you are looking at is what ought to be, not that what is. And what is the current position from all the Samia Wuku, through Atubiga, through Kenkuranchi, through Sir John and the rest, has been that the Supreme Court invites the people to come and show cause why they should not be, you know, punished for contempt. Even the laws which says, the constitutional provision which talks about the fact that there is an offense can only be, you know, defined, and the punishment also prescribed, says that as far as contempt is concerned, it is not one of those things. So what are we talking about?
Let me still refer to that very document. And he says, although the Supreme Court has the power to commit for contempt, it erred in that very instance because the act in question occurred outside the court. Now, let me bring you the exact quote. He says, the inquisitorial Star Chambers method of ancient Britain by which the accused were brought before and tried by the court was clearly inconsistent with and in contravention of Articles 12, 14.1, 19.2, 21.1, and 33.5 of the 1992 Constitution. That's what he's saying.
And I'm saying that is where he errs, because the Supreme Court has already ruled on the matter that it does not, when it comes to criminal contempt, it does not fall within the ambit or remit of the Attorney General, Article 88, notwithstanding. So that is a precedent. They can change their minds. I also referred to that in my post, that the Supreme Court is not ordinarily bound by its previous decisions. It can change its mind. Okay. So let's wait until it changes its mind. Earlier, in the case of Liberty Press, in the case of Kweku Mensah Bonso, which Martin himself prosecuted, they have allowed the Attorney General to do that. They said they've changed since 2005. They are no longer going along that tangent. They think that it is not an ordinary criminal case that the Attorney General must prosecute under Article 88. That law has not changed. So that is a position for now. This is why I won when Atachia went on that tangent, that he was going to take a risk and put his people in trouble. And no doubt they were, he was overruled and the people were sentenced to jail. I didn't happen in my case because I accepted the position as it is now. When the law changes, we'll do what the law says.
For those going with this very advocacy, insisting that there needs to be a shift in the status quo, would you agree with them, and to what extent?
I wouldn't mind at all. I've said that I'm a pragmatist. I practice the law as it is. I can advocate for a change when it is not too dicey for my clients. But if it is something which is going to be dicey and I don't take care, you're going to annoy the judges and push them to put your man into jail, that it is wrong. Advocacy for in a criminal matter is to ensure that you do everything possible to save your client. So don't go show what you can do or what you think you are capable of doing and then jeopardize the position of your client. No. You should look at him like a doctor delivering a pregnant baby, a mother. You want to be sure that the baby comes out alive. Don't joke with any ideas. You may lose the baby and the mother. Yeah, so I don't believe in, practicing the law that way, trying to argue where the issues are clear-cut. You can write an article, an advocacy, and start a new thinking, looking for a paradigm shift, but not when your client is in trouble. And you see that those who went to court this time around did not argue the way he's arguing, and it beats my imagination why he's putting blame on them, that they did not do what they ought to have done for their clients. Yet Atachia followed that path; he did not succeed. So what is he saying?
Let's come back to this very issue of the president choosing to remit the sentences of these 3 jailed contemners. And you describe it as an orchestrated plan. From the onset, when we spoke to you earlier, you said, you just saw this as an orchestrated plan just to get these people out, seeking to suggest that you do not agree with the move by the president.
It's a very painful thing for the judiciary. Remember that the judiciary ordinarily will not speak. It is the bar, so I'll be a secretary of the bar before, national secretary and president of Greater Accra Bar. We try to defend the judiciary. They will not talk. What is done, in effect, is saying that those judges who sat there are not reasonable. They don't know the difference between sentencing somebody to 1 month and sentencing somebody to 4 months. That's what is done. The people said we wanted to send a signal out there that these things must stop. And that's why I don't agree with this Tamaklo guy as well. I went in to beg and to say that we will not do that or repeat it anymore. Why should you continue repeating them and thinking that the Supreme Court should sit there, you go and abuse, attack them and come and beg, and then they ask you to go? What do you take the Supreme Court for?
But some would say they were fined, they've paid. And
that's what I'm
beyond
saying.
The fine
they say that they want to go beyond allowing Sir John and the rest to go home, to send a signal that you do these things, you must face the full rigors. So they know. They were the people who sentenced Atubiga to 3 days. Yeah. They were the people who sentenced Ken Kranche, I think, to 10 days. You think they don't know? You are now teaching them that 4 months is too long. They should have made it 1 month. That's what you have done. You put a slap, you slap them in their faces. They are not reasonable people. When they are giving sentences, they should think. They don't just impose sentences. That is what he has done to them. They will sit down. Next time, let people misbehave and say, well, we will act. Because when we act, the president will tell us that we don't know. What we are doing is wrong. He knows better. So he should deal with the matters. Why did he have to tag those words to the statement that they are now calling on panelists and the rest, that when they go to take part in discussions, they must be circumspect in what they are saying? You think the Supreme Court didn't know that? That's what they were actually talking about. They don't live in cloisters. They live in society. Look at the Constitution. The justice, if it emanates from the people, people are allowed to take part. Lay people are allowed to take part in justice with judicial system, and the rest. Ordinary people take part. So you can criticize us, but be careful of the language that you use. Many years in Liberty Press, Akufo-Addo Chief Justice said so to them. Look, we don't live. Justice is not a cloistered virtue. You can talk about it, but be mindful of the language and not do things that we tend to demean the status. That is the only place we have. We balance issues between even the states and the judiciary. When the state decides to detain somebody beyond 48 hours, beyond periods that are specified under the Constitution, where do you go? You go to the same judiciary to go and tell them that somebody is flouting the law. Can you please help? They do. So what is this? He has power, yes, and 71, but that's not the way to exercise it. Because the people, you should have read the ruling. They made it clear that they know what they are doing and they want to send a clear signal there. You think the 10,000 they paid was for nothing? They said if they fail to pay the 10,000, they should go in for an extra 1 month. Another 1 month, yeah. So to avoid that, they paid the money. It's not because they wanted to pay. They didn't want to go in for an extra 1 month. So I disagree completely with what he's done.
What does this move by the president mean, particularly for the separation of powers and the respect for rule of law in the country?
Well, it doesn't mean anything. To me, there's no ramification. Nothing arises. Both of them has acted constitutionally. The Supreme Court has power to commit for contempt. So they summoned the people and committed them for contempt and sentenced them. The president also has power under Article 72 in consultation with Council of State to also give a remission or pardon. He's done that. I don't see anything wrong. It is for him to think about how the judiciary will feel, to think about how the country feels. Look, when they set up that book and started collecting them, PPP also set up a book.
Yeah. We'll be coming to that in a bit.
So why should they think that it's only the NDC people's word that he should listen to?
There have been some who have argued that the circumstances under which the president ought to be exercising that prerogative is not the same in this very instance, and that he's abusing that privilege in the Constitution.
I won't go that far. I won't also even talk about that decree which says that in contempt matters it shouldn't arise. You see, in that decree, if you like, it's a lesser law in terms of the Constitution, which is the main law of the land. And by constitutional interpretation, any law which is found to be inconsistent with the Constitution, to the extent of its consistency, must be declared null and void. Now, if you go under Article 11, which deals with laws of the country, it says that all existing laws form part of the laws of Ghana, except that they should now be interpreted with the necessary modifications as to bring them in line with the Constitution. So if the Constitution has given the President the power to exercise on Article 72, I don't see how a decree can take that power away. That is rather should be seen as inconsistent with Article 72. So he has power to do it. 72 gives him that power. I don't see anything wrong. I'm saying that he ought not to have exercised that discretion or whatever prerogative he calls it. He shouldn't have done.
Going forward, do you think a specific clause needs to be put in this very Constitution, particularly to handle issues such as this?
Well, you are talking constitutional amendment because this power is given to him under the Constitution. So unless we're looking at constitutional amendment, it's not going to be easy. Constitutional amendments are quite serious matters because they affect the fundamental law of the land. So if people think that they ought to be put there, fine. You know.
But would you recommend such a move?
Nobody begrudges a president for having granted a pardon. July 1st, he granted over 840-something pardon to prisoners. Each of them was pardoned. Did anybody raise any hell? So you have to look at the circumstances and the context within which you are exercising your rights. That is all there is to it. I don't think that is necessary. I mean, every president must have a discretion to exercise in the circumstances. It is even said that there are times that the judges even call on the president to exercise his mercy, prerogative of mercy. I haven't looked at the the evidence and all that the man is guilty. They've sentenced him having regard to the evidence, but they still think that there's something wrong. They've done maybe justice according to law, but wider justice may call for maybe some kind of remission being given. I'm not interested in that. I think we should leave it to the president's good sense to decide whether he should be listening to his party people, NDC people calling upon him to act, or MPP people calling upon Akufo-Addo to act. Those are the issues.
The Progressive People's Party, you mentioned them a short while ago. Yes, we do know that they also opened the book and they collated some signatures and all, seeking to force the president or compel the president to uphold the rule of law by respecting the decision of the judges in this very instance. Well, today, earlier on our show, on the AM show, we did speak to their policy analyst, Kofi Asamoah, who suggested that, well, the president, by this action, has shown how weak he is as a president.
Well, it is his opinion, but I'm saying that he has shown and portrayed himself more as a president for his party and not the nation. There was a total condemnation. I'm saying that if people were not interested in e-giving or generally against his granting pardon, they would have raised hell about the 800. Because in my view, it appears to be the largest. I'm not too sure how many people have been granted pardons in the past in terms of the numbers. But when I read over 840, I said, wow, it could also be an attempt to, if you like, decongest the court system, having seen your guys' program on logged out and forgotten and all that. So it's maybe in that line. Nobody complain. Why are people complaining about this particular act? But that is what you should ask.
But you don't think this in any way suggests the president has, to a very large extent, betrayed the country in the interest of his party?
That is exactly the point I'm making. He has listened to them and he has behaved as a president for the NDC and not the president for the country. That is my personal opinion. He has power, but how do you use the power? If you use the power this way, your party people, keep shouting and saying, and Mercy told everybody that he has come to this country to defend President Mahama, and he's not afraid of anything. Nothing will happen to him. True to form, nothing has happened. He's walking free. So why? It is an NDC thing. That is the way I say it. Nobody can change my mind about it. How many other political parties joined this kind of thing? How many Ghanaians also joined? That's why it was solely. Well, he has shown that he wants to become a president for his NDC.
I see. So a pretty bad precedent you think the president has set there. But let's look at the ramifications, particularly for the president as candidate in the upcoming elections. I have a quote here from Alhaji Bature. Well, we do know he's the managing editor of the Alhaji newspaper and a sympathizer of the governing National Democratic Congress. He says, he raises quite a number of issues. One, he thinks such a move by the president is just necessarily going to create a bit of conflict between the executive and the judiciary. And now this is his quote. He says, if there's conflict between the executive and the judiciary, it means democracy is not only threatened, but the stability and peace of this country is even more threatened. Would you agree with this statement?
You see, the judiciary is very slow in reacting. That I can assure you. I've been a member of the Judicial Council before, General Legal Council and all that. They are very, very slow in reacting. You need a revolutionary judge, a Chief Justice, for example, to say that, look, The president is going to open parliament, is going to address, sessional address for parliament, and he needs Chief Justice and his people to be there. We are boycotting because of what he has done. You might need a very revolutionary Chief Justice, because after all, what can you do to him once you appoint him? It becomes difficult to remove the person. But those are the things that we should be thinking of. Now, how do we collaborate in future? If we do this sort of thing and let them feel like they are nothing, let them feel like you can toy with them. They've considered all the issues. They wrote a reasoned judgment, a ruling, why they think that these people should go in. You don't even care about them. And now people are trying to hide behind the Council of State. Who are they? They are the same people. They are the same people who appointed them. Some of them were elected, yes, but
majority of them were appointed.
A lot of them are the same group. So
you think that the judiciary ought to be sending? You think the judiciary ought to be sending a clear message to the president?
We have to read in between the lines.
How so?
When things start happening, you have now to read in between the lines. Whether it is because of this attitude, that is why they have decided to do this. But because they will never, I know them, never come out clearly and tell you that they are not happy with what we have done. True. But subsequent events, and maybe the collaboration that you expect from them and the rest, whether they may ask the Attorney General to come and defend a particular position if the Attorney General fails, because almost invariably they have to, in constitutional interpretation, call on the Attorney General to come and file papers, please, we want to hear the side of government. They can say that, well, we are not interested, you are not collaborating with us, we don't intend to collaborate with you, you have been served, you have refused to file your papers, let's go on with the evidence we have, So
in other words, the judiciary might end up sabotaging the president.
Well, in a subtle way, but they will never show that. They are not made that way. They don't talk. You should, when that's why I'm telling you that even when they are abused, it is the Bar Association that tries to come to their defense. They will not.
Let me still stay with Alhaji Bature, because there's something also he says in this very piece. It says, what happened is not about any political party. The judges are human beings and they live in Ghana. They'd seen everything going on in the country. I can tell you that from my little research conducted and the investigations on the matter, the judges took the decision and arrived at their ruling based on the need for peace and stability ahead of the crucial elections. And this is attributed to Alhaji Bature, and like I said, he's a sympathizer of the governing National Democratic Congress. Should there be any violence or possible chaos in the upcoming polls, do you think, in like manner, like the previous question I asked as to whether the judiciary will in any way try to sabotage the presidency just so they can get back at the president for this very act, do you think they might see through such a threat?
Let's put it this way. The judiciary, judges take oaths. And they want to be true to their oaths. Then they want to do justice in accordance with, their judicial oath, without fear or favor, affection or ill will towards anybody. That you can say for them. I can give you examples like, when you are called to the bar. Some of us decide to go to private practice, others decide to go to the bench. And then you have a case before a classmate or a callmate, and you think because he's your callmate, you may try to pander maybe to your... It doesn't happen that way. He's taking an oath. So he will rule on the basis of what we have brought before him or her, So, well, sabotaging, not necessarily, but I'm saying that you may have to read through the lines to see whether what has been done is what they would ordinarily have done if this thing had not occurred. But you cannot put it down straight to say that, look, they are doing this because, or they would do this. I wouldn't want to go that way. Let us say that we'll still keep them to their judicial oath.
Now, many have, as we begin to wrap up on this very conversation, many have suggested that this is likely to cost the president in the upcoming polls. Would you agree with them?
we say that they are political decisions. When you take a decision, remember that it can also be political. It may have consequences. I remember one judge saying so to some lawyers who went to court, saying that the workers of Giok distilleries had been wrongly, dismissed, and that they think it should be set aside, And he said that there are times that presidents also take political decisions, so he should live with it. If that is what he has done, but it is in accordance with the law, so be it. But then live with it and let the people of Ghana decide whether they want to have a president who is not a president for all, but rather a president who wants to satisfy only the needs of. You see, you took an oath, a presidential oath, to be father for all. I mean, that's what I think Atta Mills put it. Yes, he wants to be father for all. And you are not being father for all. I mean, even of the 4 months, assuming without admitting that you still want to exercise it, you think they could not have even done half of that period for you to put it up as a case, a defense that, look, they were given 4, but, having served part, half of that sentence, I've decided to exercise. But you have decided that they should work at 1 month. Yeah. You set it at 1 month, saying that those justices are not reasonable. They ought to have known that 4 months is harsh. So I have set it at 1. He may have to live with it. The elections are around the corner. Should live with it. We don't know whether these things make any difference. Remember, the kind of site that we run and the kind of, things that influence people to vote. If we go and give them roofing sheets and give them head pans and outboard motors and give V8 vehicles to, chiefs and the rest, all this talk may come to nothing, perhaps, in the view of those people, that they've been given something for which they want to vote. If at the end of the day, they are looking at the issues and it becomes an issue-based propaganda, issue-paid campaign, then from all indications, things haven't gone right. And people should have to take that into consideration. But if they are waiting for roofing sheets and bentua and kako and money and, roofing sheet and V8 cars and things to be Ata Kambu and Mama Kambu and whatever, these are the things that are going to influence them. And I'm afraid we may talk and talk and talk and they may not see. But I am confident that looking at the circumstances, like President Kufuor said, look at your circumstances and vote. The circumstances now do not look like the president must have another chance, including even what has happened today. Yesterday, what happened yesterday. I do not see that he has a chance of making it.
Very good. Many thanks for your time right here on News Desk. And lawyer Ayiko too is a senior at the bar, and is also. Just before we go, though, I'm sure you might have heard or read about. Maybe a junior colleague of yours suggesting that he's going to begin his hunger strike today, following this very decision by the president. He says he's going to vote, campaign for your candidate as well. But what do you make of that?
Well, if he can sustain it, it's not easy. How long does he want to go on strike?
He's saying 1 week.
Oh, 1 week?
Just a week.
Maybe it's possible that he can sustain. I should be careful because people go hunger strikes and die.
Would you not help him out? Maybe just do some few hours for him.
No, I would not risk my life for this. I will let the political people decide. The people of Ghana should decide on 7th December.
Right. Many thanks for your time. Lawyer, Ayiko too, like I said, he's a senior at the bar and he's been a former Attorney General. He was former Attorney General under the Kufuor administration. He's been our guest on News Desk this morning. He's helped us understand quite a number of things, particularly relating to this issue of contempt. We'll bring you a lot more on this in subsequent bulletins, particularly on our news and news analysis program, The Pulse, which airs at 3 p.m. right here on your Joy News channel. Time now for some business with Emmanuel Abuaju. You have to stay on.